Hi, my name is Dan Zeilinger, and I have been a world-traveling full-time trad jazz musician for the past 40 years. Some of my most memorable performances were on the lawn of the Edinburgh Castle, at Imperial Palace in Japan, as well as TV shows and commercials across the world. I've met many people during my career and have spent many hours on stage and off with these musicians, talking about jazz, life, and more. Some are touring musicians, some are theme park warriors, and some are casual musicians who play on the weekends with friends. I think they all have stories worthy of a movie script, and through these interviews, I'll be sharing them with you.
All right.
Hi there. This is Dan Zeilinger with Trad Jazz Today. My next guest is somebody who I've admired from afar for a very long time. One of the top banjo players in the world, has more creds than anybody I know. Has been featured on national television on networks and Downbeat magazine, and she's in the Banjo Hall of Fame and all kinds of great stuff. Here she is, Cynthia Sayer. Hi, Cynthia.
Hi. So great to meet you for more than a 10-minute chat at a festival a million years ago.
Well, one of the reasons I started this channel was I miss that. I miss musicians' lounges.
Yeah.
I miss the interaction with my fellow musicians.
Yeah, we all
And
do.
even more so than I miss the playing, and
Ah,
and necessarily the audience interaction. There's just a special thing about musicians, and the interaction that musicians have with each other that happens both on stage and off stage, as far as being an ethereal thing. And that's kind of why this channel exists.
well, I hear you, and I'm sure every musician would relate to that. Yeah,
Yeah.
every person, every performer, anyone in the arts, I'm sure would relate to that. Yeah.
Now, I know that you started on piano lessons. I
Yeah.
was kind of curious because I'm an educator also. I mean, I've
Oh.
actually been through the schools, taught in the school system and things. What was your first piano teacher like, and was that a good experience?
Well, I went to, I apparently was begging my parents for piano lessons when I was very little, and they made me wait till I was 6, thinking it would pass, and I still wanted it. So they sent me to a place in the next town called the French School of Music. And I had a very strict teacher, and, she'd balance a pencil on my wrist and, do all these things which are actually not taught that way anymore. And I had solfeggio once a week and lessons. It was a whole thing. And my parents, my mom decided to quit me after a few years there and go to a local piano teacher because they were really geared to teach concert, up and aspiring concert pianists, which I was certainly
No,
not that. As much as I loved piano, it was a hobby.
were your parents musical?
Um, my mom is a singer, but a hobbyist singer. She was in all kinds of vocal groups and did vocal group competitions and everything. And I grew up with that. And and this might be a little funny. I'm sure she'll watch this, but all these years, I never heard my mother sing alone. She was very shy about her singing, and yet she would sing with groups all the time. And Mom, I still haven't heard you sing one of these days. And my dad was tone deaf, but he loved music so much. He was just one of these music guys who just loved music.
So you had music going on in the household all the time, one way or
I would
another.
say in one way or another. Well, I have 3 siblings. All of us, it was just considered part of growing up and being a kid that you took some lessons in something. And maybe some of your listeners will enjoy the fact that at one point, I have a sister who's a year older than me. And at one point, she was playing bagpipes while I was playing banjo. So how's that for in our Jewish home in the New Jersey suburbs? So
Oh,
I had kind of a wacko loud family. And one of my brothers played uke for a while. The other one still plays trumpet. He actually went into music also. He's a classical trumpeter and runs a multi international music school for preschoolers called the Music Class. And I've done a bunch of recordings for him and stuff. And he still gigs as well. So. So
Uh,
yeah, music.
No,
But
that's
it was just gonna a hobby. I mean, I liked writing, I liked dance, I liked musical theater. I like, it was like, it was just another thing,
yeah. It's obviously we talked before this last introduction, and I had read one of your previous interviews, and I was under the impression that you initially wanted to play drums, and then your father said no. But I guess that's not how it happened.
Almost. I mean, that's sort of how it happened in that I played these other instruments, and then I saw at our middle school, I saw the swing band. I think they were called the dance band. And I saw the guy playing drums and, one of my classmates, and I was like, that looks so cool. And so I lobbied my parents for a drum set, and they were both like, no way. We don't forget, we all played instruments. It was very loud. And they were like, we're not having drums at home too, forget it. And so I really pushed for it. And one day I came home from school and there was this banjo lying on my bed. And I knew immediately that was a diversionary bribe. And I knew I'd never get my drums. And I was just like, okay. I had a vague association with bluegrass, but I never really heard banjos. I had no real musical connection to it. And I was like, okay. And, the only reason, I mean, it might've been weird, for them to even put a banjo there as opposed to some other instrument, but they saw an advertisement for someone in our town who offered to teach banjo. So they were just hoping to get me off the friggin' drums. And it worked because it ended up that the person who was teaching banjo, her name was Patty Fisher. And I had never met a grown-up woman in the arts, a professional woman in the arts. She had lived all over the world and done all these things that I thought were so exciting. And she became a very important role model to me in terms of validating this alternative possibility, because I'm just old enough that we didn't have those role models. We didn't see women. I didn't see women musicians. I saw lead rock and roll singers, but not as a given to do this kind of thing. Certainly not in jazz. I never saw women playing jazz, and so it was very important to know that anything was possible.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, um, of course, there were bands like Ina Ray Hutton's band, and there were a few during the swing era. There were quite a few
Yes.
women that led their own bands and that type of thing. But you're right, it wasn't common.
Well, I didn't know about any of that as a kid. See, I only learned about that later. And as a matter of fact, I learned about it when after I had become a musician, and I thought I was going to go to law school. So this was only temporary, to do this. And then I was going to get a grown-up job and do all the right things, And and I think I started to learn about some of the other great women of the past in jazz just because I think unconsciously I was kind of lonely and looking for some role models. And I also, I had the great honor to work with and meet Marion McPartland. And we had a number of discussions about that, and I used to, talk to her about that. And I think she was great.
Of course, she had a radio show out here on the West Coast, I guess internationally for quite a while, and I was a real fan
Yeah.
of her radio show, let alone her playing, of
Yes.
course.
Yeah. I
Um,
was on her show twice, and it was a great honor to get to work with her.
Yeah, I have to say, looking at your, because I try to research pretty accurately the people who I interview, that you must have one talented agent. No, I'm not saying that you're not amazing, and because you
No,
are, but
thank
but
you, but
but how many
it's a
great I'm just saying, how many great musicians do you know that have no exposure? You know?
well, that's, it. One of the facts about being a musician, which when I try to engage young people, I do school programs and lecture demos and stuff like that. And one of the main things I try to say is that it's a business, just like any other business. And I think that it's really hard. It's really, really hard. You have to work very, very hard. Sometimes I had some good management, sometimes I did not. And it doesn't matter whether you have it or not. You have to generate work, because I didn't have anyone taking care of me or supporting me or whatever. I've always looked after myself financially, and so I had to come up with it. And that's a good inspiration. And I learned as I went. And then also I did get good management. And then I have a wonderful agent and a wonderful manager right now. But, these things evolve and change. And I don't know, you got to just work really hard.
Was your career? I'm sorry for my ignorance on these points,
No.
but were you? Have you primarily come to the forefront as a soloist, or did you do your share of bands and things also?
Um, I don't really separate that. I understand and care about being the best rhythm section player that I know how. And also I'm a band leader and a soloist. But if what you mean by soloist, do you mean like frontline person soloist, which I know we're getting a little bit of musical terminology of some of the
Oh,
people
it's
listening
okay.
are not musicians. But I play solos just like a horn player plays solos, but I also care about my job in the rhythm
Oh,
section. And I like working with bands more than playing alone, if that's what you're asking.
yes.
Oh, okay, sorry. I just wasn't sure what
No,
you
no,
meant, like
it's
take a
okay.
solo versus
Well, there's a difference between somebody who can walk, for example, do a solo cruise ship gig as a solo artist on banjo, or whether or not they are somebody who always finds themselves within the rhythm section, within a band. Those were just the distinctions I was making. And
well,
obviously you've done both, or a lot.
I have done both, and when I was in my 20s and early 30s, I did that kind of cruise ship act thing for a while, and I don't think I was a very good fit for it, but boy, did I learn a lot. I learned so much about how to give a much stronger concert, and I wrote my first arrangements, and I really benefited. It was a good musical education for me, but I don't think it was the best fit for me for what I was after. But it was also good money at the time, so I did it, and it was fun.
Well,
you know, all
as a
kinds of reasons.
as a tuba player, you sort of get jealous because we can't walk up to a campfire and entertain people by ourselves, type of thing. It's not something you don't have Hall in America asking for a solo sousaphone player to come aboard a cruise. So it's always a
Well,
fascinating thing for us as
uh, once in a blue moon, I remember I used to do these private parties, and I would be hired to play by myself. I've always felt very, very shy about playing alone. I don't know why. I guess I took after my mom with the singing. We mentioned briefly that my mom, before we started recording, that my mom was a vocalist, or is a vocalist. She still sings, but she participated in, as a hobby, in various vocal groups, and they would have competitions and things like that. But I never heard her sing, and alone. And it's just sort of funny, I grew up with her. She's still there, still loves music and everything. But I don't know. I always felt kind of funny playing by myself, and I love it listening to other soloists. So it's one of the things that I hope to be comfortable, more comfortable with. Now that we're in a pandemic time, I'm actually doing something which is new for me. I'm doing solo. I've been hired to do a series of interactive solo Zoom concerts, which I never would have even had the imagination to think that there would be such a thing as a gig like that. And it's good for me, it's always good to stretch no matter what you do. It's good to do something different.
now they're doing that when everybody participates separately and then they join it together within the Zoom concert type of thing.
Well, this is just me alone. So yes, there are all different kinds of online things going on, and I'm trying to educate myself about how to be. I mentioned briefly before, I'm transitioning to a whole better computer system, and I mean, we're all doing. We're shifting. The music business has shifted, obviously, and whether even when this ends, the trajectory, the professional trajectory, has still been greatly affected by this, and there's a different world that's opened up that if I want to keep working, I gotta learn about it. So I'm doing that, and it's
Yeah.
kind of fun, but yeah, we all miss being together, of course.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, I understand. In fact, we had mentioned before we started recording that I had interviewed Bob Ringwald, and at the end of our interview, he said, Dan, I've made my living all these years as a piano player, whether it be in a bar or cabaret or on a stage with a band." He goes, and if it was 20 years earlier, if the pandemic hit 20 years earlier, I would have lost my house and my kids,
yeah,
and because that was just his bread and butter. And for those of you who don't know Bob Ringwald, he's a West Coast piano player who just happens to be blind, and he's a fantastic piano player, wonderful guy.
mhm.
And it didn't really hit me until he said that, the depth of what's going on with musicians.
Yeah, well, I, of course, one of the advantages that I have is that I've just been around longer and I have more savings and very practical things like that. Some of the young musicians here in New York City, I live in New York City, and some of them, they have kids or whatever. I'm like, so it's a hard time, but not in any way. This is an incredibly, tragic, difficult, hard time. But it's amazing some of the silver linings that have also emerged in terms
Agreed.
of creative. I don't know. It's really. I mean, anyone who's in any kind of art, I'm sure it's like, okay, here's what it is. So what can you do with that instead? And there's something kind of stimulating about that. And I've got projects in the works and stuff going on that I don't know if I would have thought to do them, you know, if
Yeah.
if this hadn't happened. And so
Well,
we're
well,
very adaptable.
of course, this show is a product of the lockdown,
Yes.
actually,
Yeah.
and one of the unexpected side effects has been other musicians watching this and hearing other people talk about them. And there's all kinds of reconnections that are being made from
Oh,
musicians
nice.
who people who haven't seen each other, thought about each other, and all of a sudden there are phone calls being made and experiences and memories being shared. And it's
Oh,
really
that's
become,
lovely.
yeah, it's really become bizarrely a silver lining, as you said, in certain ways.
I also found by listening to some programs online, I heard, as we all know, there's like 8 zillion fabulous things going on online. There's streaming and programs and all these things, and for the first several months, like I found it very hard to play, and I found it very hard to just move forward, as we all know. In early jazz, we had a lot of losses. We were hit very hard. And I saw some of my colleagues just doing all these amazing things. And it was so helpful to hear some people say, oh, I'm having trouble wanting to reconnect and play. And I was like, oh, it's not just me. So now I'm going full steam ahead again. But, I went through a phase there where, I kind of lost my mojo and it was hard. But now, I don't know.
Oh,
Onward.
absolutely. One of the things that really fascinated me was Woody's European tour that you went on originally as the piano player for.
Yeah, well, I was the pianist with the band for
Right.
over 10 years. Yeah. I did play banjo once in a while, but very, very few times.
It's so
When we
sad that
would,
we just lost Eddie, of course.
yeah, yeah, it was very sad. And I wonder if I have it here. Um, I was just given a poster by his partner, Ruth Millard. Do you mind if I run and
No,
get it?
not at all.
Um,
Sure.
from that first tour, I know exactly where it is. I'll be right back.
No problem.
So okay, I'm back.
Cool.
So this is a wonderful poster that I assume Eddie prized, and Ruth Miller, Eddie's longtime partner, very kindly gave it to me just about, I don't know, a week ago at the most. And this is from our very first tour. And this is when we were being, they made the documentary film Wild Man Blues, directed by the two-time Academy Award-winning director Barbara Koppel. And I was so excited that there would be like another woman on the tour, and we've maintained a friendship ever since then. And she's a fabulous, amazing filmmaker, but that was quite an experience. And I remember being shocked that if we were going to do a tour, I was surprised that the first tour was such a long, big tour, because I don't know, I just didn't think Woody, meaning, would jump in with 2 feet like that and do such a, I think it was like a good 3.5 weeks or something. I just figured we'd go for a week to see if he liked it, but it was great.
Wow, amazing. You've done so much traveling. I know you'll identify with my next statement, which is it's it's disheartening and I don't know. It's such a dichotomy that our style of music is so popular everywhere else in the world. It's unfortunate it's more popular everywhere else in the world than it is here.
You know, I hear that a lot. And um, I would say, in terms of there being a commercial market, of course, I agree. It's a very niche market. Um, but there's a pretty vibrant swing dance scene out there
Oh,
of young people, and it's not small, and it's pretty big, and in this country, as well as in elsewhere around the world. And
well, groups like
I used to feel that was true. I don't know anymore. I'm
I
not
mean,
sure.
I was just going to say groups like Royal Crown Review and Swirl Nut Zippers sort of brought that basic kind of style back to the forefront about 20 years ago when they were really popular. My son was one of those swing dancers
Ah,
when he was in high school, and so I understand that that community exists. Um, but I also know that when I traveled the world, I could find, or I would end up on quite a bit of national television in Japan and Hungary and England and Scotland, wherever else. And to see jazz on major networks here for any length of time is almost impossible, which is
oh, true, of
why we
course.
all watch Lawrence Welk, just to
Well,
see live musicians at some point in time, if you can call that live.
but yes, I mean, of course you're right. But again, I think it also depends on how we're defining this. For real revivalist, trad jazz bands, I think that's harder. But take a band like Vince Giordano's Nighthawks. I mean,
Right.
they're pretty busy, or have been until this lockdown, doing all kinds of recordings for films, and Boardwalk Empire and all that. So I mean, I don't know, you could very well be right, and I used to feel that was deeply true, just because I would travel so much abroad, and the quality of work, the caliber of work, the pay was a whole different level, than it was here. And but I guess I just don't know anymore.
Well, most of my international travel, I have to admit, was about 20 years ago or so. And
Ah,
I just remember I was playing a concert in Hungary, and I looked off the stage, and it was a college crowd. It was at a college, in fact, and they were singing along to Ice Cream. I was just going, it blew my mind
yeah.
to see a whole, auditorium of 16 to 18-year-olds knowing the lyrics to Louis Armstrong tunes, and people coming up to me talking to me about Zooty Singleton and things. It was just mind blowing.
Yeah, well, I did have that experience too. Around 20 years ago, I remember being in somebody's car in Germany, and they had there were cassettes. Whenever that was, there were cassettes, and I'm flipping through the cassettes, and there was like different hot swing, traditional jazz, and stuff in this family's car who were not necessarily jazz people. There was just two or three out of the other 10 or something, but they were there. That was a part of the spectrum of music that the average person was familiar with and listened to. And I was shocked. Because of course that's, we have we have such a rich, I mean, look at the population of this country and look at all the cultures here and all the rich things that we have creatively and musically and artistically, and it's almost a wonder that there's any one style that reaches to a really high level with all of the different worlds that meld here.
Right.
But I don't know.
No,
I
I understand. I agree too. Also.
Yeah, I hope early jazz. I mean, I I do find, though, in support of your statement, when I'm doing marketing for a concert or something like that, we avoid the word jazz, and because people don't know really what that means, and it scares them a little bit.
Well,
Sometimes the word jazz and banjo kind of evens it all out, but I'm very, very careful about when I do and when I do not include that word, with
sure,
marketing. So
sure. Of course, you have people like Tuba Skinny on
yeah,
YouTube now that has just set the world on fire with a youngish band and a lot of young fans. And
yeah.
we have some bands like that out here on the West Coast that basically want nothing to do with the older jazz crowd because it's their own thing and they want it to be their thing. Uh, and
And
so,
there's a different style, right? It's a
well, that's
different
right.
sound. I love that,
Yeah.
you
And
know.
what's interesting about it is, I'm talking about myself here now as an older player. We're kind of blindsided because our fans tend to be, in fact, I know on my channel, for example, that my fan demographic is 60 and above for about 80% of my demographic.
Mhm.
And, and, uh,
Sure.
we tend not to see, although my intention was for this to be kind of a pool of knowledge for younger players and to get it, because I have a lot of really great people coming on the channel, but they want to do their own thing and they want to believe it's their own thing. You know, uh, they
Well,
can quite often they'll run across the sand, ignoring the footprints that are already there. Is kind of a metaphoric way to put it.
maybe it's nice to pass on the baton and for something to be reinterpreted in fresh ways with, we're all a product, of course, of, the influences of our time. And I think, I mean, someone like me, I mean, I'm very specifically not what I call a recreationist style player, which I also am really glad that people like doing that, because that way I get to hear, hear them, like Vince Giordano's band. Like I love those guys, but I love taking the influences of my time, and that's what I seek. This kind of contemporary past and contemporary melding in some way. And so of course different generations will find different ways of doing that, and I don't know, I kind of like that, but I appreciate it's different. And so, depends on, it's a big world of subjective taste. So
It's interesting that you bring up the idea of labels, because the people who started playing this music had no labels and they had no set instrumentation, and they were just out trying to make a buck and get people to dance. And
yes,
it's a lot. Quite often, it's the scholastic community who wants to start labeling everything, uh, this or
yes.
that.
I have a book that I put out, a play along program. It's called You're in the Band, which I should have a copy handy. It's here somewhere. Um, And at the beginning of the book, I did an introduction. I mean, I'm calling it a book, but it's a program, and you know, for teaching, learning, practicing traditional jazz and hot swing, and oh, I have it here somewhere. Anyway, um, I interviewed people about the terminology, and it was very interesting that you know, one of my colleagues, you know, one of our jazz elders, Ed Pulser, who's, you know, who you I'm sure you know very well, you know, he was going on about how those are other people's categories and so on, and it's true, but you know, it's understandable that people try to, I don't know, try to come up with something. Oh, here it is. Here it is. Okay. So little, you're in the band. And it was interesting, the different ways that people suggested. I said, well, what do I actually call this music? And what's your feelings about, you know, these different words? Because in the time I've been a musician, the words have changed dramatically. And it was so interesting to see the different word choices with the different generations. It was, you know, it was very clear. And I remember Ed Pulser talking about that, you know, about how the critics are the ones who decided to label us, and it's just music. It's just music. And of course, if you keep that in mind, it's very freeing. There's no rules. It's your music. You play your music the way you want to play your music.
Well, you know, it's frustrating at times that some of the older steadfast fans, I guess you would call moldy figs, are so rigid in their interpretations of what things are and aren't, or what things are right and wrong. Uh, you know, I mean, we know, I'm sure you know Tex Wyndham, and not, I love the man, by the way. I've played with his band a couple times. Uh, and he and I actually got into a big fight in the old American Rag newspaper uh, about the fact that he was saying that our style of music was dying, and I'm saying no, it's not. It's just started making money. So it's kind of the whole discussion is interesting. Um,
Well, yeah, you know, and the thing is that I actually think there are many different realities that are true. It's not just one way. Depends where you live, depends what country you're in, depends what crowd you keep. Are you playing for fun? Is this your full-time job? Which affects the kind of work you might get. That's the only reason why I'm even bringing that up. You know, if you have a day job, you're not necessarily available to just leave and, you know, and tour or whatever. And as we all know, some people, you know, who are only part-time musicians are fabulous players, and it's just, and that's never a reflection on someone's talent or skill.
yeah,
But I don't know. It's, you know, we're getting very philosophical about it all. You know, one of the things that I'm an I'm very involved. I've always been very involved in education, and of course, since my tours and gigs, like everyone's, they've all been canceled or postponed. You know, that's become a more central part of how I'm spending my time right now. I just feel that there's a lot of new new ways of hearing, feeling, and taking this music. And I like that people find their own with it in their own way. But that's a lot of what I like. And if you like hearing a certain kind of music in a certain kind of way, I think that's more challenging because the world changes.
well, yeah, as we've kind of been shown by multiple people, but pretty prevalently lately by Bria Schoenberg, is that you can pay homage to the oldest styles of music there are and still move it forward. You know, that's one of the wonderful things I think about her playing and what she's doing with her career.
Yeah.
And for the rest of and you must be extremely proud or glad, I guess would probably be a better word, of the fact that we have people out there like Rebecca Kilgore and Banu Gibson and Katie Chavera that have all really come to the forefront of jazz lately, you know?
Yes, absolutely. If you're talking about women artists, Um,
All those I
absolutely.
just named were all women artists,
Oh,
but
oh, I didn't know if you were highlighting that, but yeah, like Bria is actually on this play along program. I have Bria, myself, Kevin Dorn, who I'm sure you know, Mike Weatherly, a wonderful string bassist in town here, who you might know also, um, and yeah, there's a whole um, I'm losing track.
well,
You
I
have
was
to edit that out.
my point was not only are there seem to be some stronger personalities as far as women in jazz,
Yeah.
but Bria's got it all. She's younger. She's got a very much a mainstream presence. Plus, she plays everything from wild man blues to her some of her more contemporary original compositions. And it's wonderful to see somebody embrace the scope and not poo-poo one of the other ends of it.
That's true. I think Bria and jazz itself started old and evolved, and Bria has done the same thing with her career. I think a lot of the players that I know and work with here in New York. I mean, Bria is an extraordinary and unique artist. I don't think it's so unusual to stretch. At least sometimes it's hard for me to tell. We have a certain different. There's different musical cultures in different areas, as you know. Here we have someone like Scott Robinson, for example, who will play in hot jazz bands, and then he also does very out stuff and all over the map. Greg Cohen, awesome bassist who was with our Woody Allen band. He lives in Germany right now, and who's on a number of my records. I just think he's amazing. But gosh, he works with everybody from Ornette Coleman to Woody Allen, and I don't, I think a lot of it depends on what your interests are, what your opportunities are, and what attracts you. And if you are open to it, there's lots of ways you can stretch and grow. And I really encourage that, of people when I teach them. I believe in listening and learning from our masters, from our jazz elders, and I also believe in learning and listening to anything that strikes your fancy, and integrating it. So, and then paying tribute. And Bria's journey has gone in a certain direction, and it's great.
Well, then, and I mean, this interview wasn't to talk about Bria, obviously,
Yeah.
but she's just the more and more I see of what she's done with it has to do with her arrangements and her activity with the youth. She's just an astounding person. If you're watching this show and haven't heard, I'm surprised you're watching this show. Anyway,
Well, and actually, I don't know when this is going to air, but I'm one of the faculty members of the New York Hot Jazz Camp, and we're doing a virtual weekend in October. And so, if you play an instrument, and it's going to be really interesting. I mean, if you look at the lineup of my fellow artists, I mean, there's some extraordinary players involved, all different ways that you can participate, remotely, and I think it'll be great. And of course, this was founded by both Brienne and Molly Ryan, a young fabulous vocalist in town, and they've really grown it to be, a wonderful thing. I always try to get my students to attend.
speaking of people of that ilk, of course, you've got Chloe Fiorina too, who's a young and upcoming female reed player.
Yes, yes. I toured internationally for 15 years before I ever worked with another woman instrumentalist. I mean, that's
Well,
like
that's what I'm saying. It seems that
incredible.
it seems
That's
that
incredible, isn't it?
it seems that
And
we're
now it's
in a
in
very
Germany.
nice time. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're in a very good time, and hopefully it'll only build from here.
Oh, there's so many great, talented young women out there now. It's like, oh, makes my heart soar. I mean, there's so much great talent. There's just great talent to begin with. Another thing that's really interesting, having been around for a while, is the general caliber of playing in New York. When I got here, there were all kinds of players. You know, there were great players, there were extraordinary players, there were mid-level players, there were, you know, and different people found their crowds and did their gigs and, you know, and whatever. And then sometimes you'd be in a band with a couple real fabulous ringers and everybody else, you know, was either learning or whatever. And of course, I was one of the learning people who shouldn't have been there probably some of the times. And then now it's not that way anymore. The general level of musicianship in the city is absolutely extraordinary. And I mean, I don't know how else to put it. I don't know how someone, I don't know that I could have learned on the job the way I did when I came here. Um, I don't know if if you could, if anyone would hire you now, if you could get by, you know, I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe you can, you know, I'm not sure, but the quality of music in early jazz and so many young players here. Oh my goodness, so many young players. Your listeners and you may know of Dennis Lickman, who runs until, you know, we're temporarily shut down, of course, at Mona's, a very well-known traditional jazz, hot jazz jam. And you can't get in the door. And when I want to check out some young players, that's where I go. They're all there and it's packed and they're all great, you know.
And dancers.
And dancers. Well, in this club, there's no room to dance. It's just wall to wall, you know. But all I'm saying is there's an amazingly high caliber of talent out there now. And speaking of which, I hope you don't mind. I would like to talk about something that I'm planning to release, I think, in late October. I'm not exactly sure how it's going to time out.
No, actually, what I was going to say is that I do want to start wrapping it up, but I do want to give you as much time here at the end to plug anything you want to plug. Let people know where they can get your music, or find your books, or find your arrangements, find you, book you. The next 10 minutes are for you, Cynthia. So go for it.
Well, thank you. Well, I mentioned if you play this, by the way, this play along program is for any instrument: trumpet, trombone, clarinet, sax, violin, piano, guitar, ukulele. I suppose if you play harmonica, that'll work too.
Bagpipes?
Well, I actually, Gunhild played some very excellent jazz bagpipe. I'm sure you know.
I saw that.
Very impressive. So yes, if they can play like her, they could do this too. This is it's a whole experience of it's to try to feel exactly what it's like when you're actually playing a gig, and it's not just tracks to play with. It's different. It's supposed to be like you are in the band. That's why it's called You're in the Band. You're supposed to have that experience, be put on the spot to play a solo, follow the endings, the intros, and all of that. And so, you know, that's what this is about. But what I'd like to speak about is, you know, I've been so privileged to have these like amazing trips, and I have a band that I work with. I have a few different bands. My main band, I suppose, is called my Joyride Band. And we did a couple of tours in China. And I decided to do a kind of a statement about the power of music, especially during such times, and how we don't care about politics, we don't care about cultures, we don't care about anything. Music is amazing. And anyone who's been a musician and has traveled, no matter what kind of music you play, I'm sure it's certainly not a unique experience that I've had, is to go places where they've never heard whatever you do before and just go nuts and they love it. And, you know, music moves us and joins us all together. And so I decided to do a music video about what I call my China tour family. So this is my Joyride Band. Dennis Lickman, Charlie Giordano, accordionist, Dennis Lickman on clarinet and violin, Larry Eagle on drums, Mauro Battisti, who's a Italian bass player, upright player, and then I invited everybody we worked with to participate or had some relationship with. So for example, the guy, when we went from New York to Beijing, I was sitting at the airport and the airline pilot came over and said, "Oh, what's that?" Because my banjo case is purple, you know. He's like, "What's that?" And I said, "Oh, it's my banjo. It ends up he's a fiddler, you know." So we're talking and he became my pal and took the banjo on the flight and looked after it, which of course I was very grateful for. Well, I invited him to be in the video. So you can see him playing his violin at the end. Our tour manager, the sound man that we toured with, like all of these people who became a part of our family, our tour family, you know, are in it. And it's just meant to demonstrate. And I know I'm going on too much about it, but I'm really excited about it. And we're in the process of putting it together. And as far as recordings go, it's all on my website. I welcome you to go there. It's just my name, cynthiasayer.com. I have 9 albums and on numerous others. And I hope you'll check it out. So I don't feel all that comfortable promoting things for myself, but I am very proud of my play along because I really feel, and I'm proud of my recordings too, but I feel like it's a way of giving a musical experience to people. So, and I care a lot about that. I think playing music is one of the most joyful things you can do. And it is an incredible job to be able to give this to other people. That's why I ended up calling my band the Joyride Band, because that's what it feels like. It feels like you're on a joyride, you know. And that's my last album too, is called Joyride. Anyway,
I tell my music students a line which you're welcome to use, and that is that as a musician, you are actually a doctor of the soul.
Well, I think that's very true. I appreciate that.
When I look out in the audience and I've gotten somebody to smile or tap their foot and forget the burdens that they carry with them all day, I know that I've done my job.
Yes. When you get people in that kind of Zen spot about the involvement and the world falls away and it's, you know, it's a wonderful thing. And it doesn't matter, like, you know, also like I think many of us who, you know, who are available for teaching, whoever your favorite musician is, call them up or email them. I guess you're not going to call them anymore, but email them. I bet you they'll teach you. Who are you a fan of? You know, call them, you know, get in touch, because we're all teaching. And I think, gosh, I don't really know any musician who doesn't enjoy that. I'm sure there are some, but it's wonderful. And when you play the banjo, I teach different instruments, but you know, most of the people who take lessons from me are banjo players, but I have a few others, because sometimes I'll coach about just, you know, soloing or music theory and so on. So different instruments actually sometimes too, but for the most part banjo. But one of the cool things about teaching banjo is really cool people want to learn banjo. You know, so I all these people, I've become such good friends with them, and it's such a pleasure, you know.
Yeah, it's nice. Banjo has kind of experienced a bit of a renaissance with people coming to the forefront like Steve Martin and Bela Fleck, and
Oh yes.
it's actually, you know, and the more contemporary country bands, it's getting a foothold again. It's nice to see.
Well, Bela has really done a lot to open the doors in terms of what I was talking about, this sort of narrow stereotyping that used to happen. You know, I would say there are amazing, crazy, fabulous different styles of banjoists out there now. And of course, Bela, you know, has reached a certain pinnacle where he's influenced, you know, generations of other people to be very, very creative. And yes, he's done a lot to get rid of some of those silly assumptions about my instrument.
Well, if there's any instrument that's equally as maligned as banjo, it's got to be sousaphone. So I do understand your heart.
Well, sousaphone's just too heavy. I
Hey,
mean, my goodness.
I played a Bacon and Day before. Don't give me that. Oh.
Well, actually, one of the things that I like about Ohm is that they are physically lighter. I don't have a lot of body weight, and all of these vintage instruments. I mean, I've heard some amazing vintage instruments that I would love, but I can't. I can barely pick them up, much less stand and perform with them. I mean, they would kill me. So and Ohm allows me to have a quality instrument that with a huge dynamic range, good feel, all the things I want, and I can actually hold it. So
Well,
I'm happy about that.
the thing I always liked about Ohm was the fact that they have a bit gentler sound. I mean, you can put the screws to it and play over a band, but in general, their tone, their quality of their sound uh, is pleasing.
Well,
Um,
it has a very round, full body sound,
I think that's what I'm trying to
but
say.
again, yes, different strokes. Everybody has what they go for, but I'm happy, but if anybody out there listening wants to invent a plug-in only carbon fiber instrument for me that weighs 5 pounds or less, contact me.
There are
Contact me.
there are some amazing things being done with fiber composite guitars now, as you know. And
I see them with violins, I see them with these other instruments, and I was like, how come I don't see them with banjo? And I learned that it's so expensive to tool that there's a question about whether there's a big enough market. And I just want to say that if this is in your field, if you happen to be listening, I bet you every banjo player out there who plays one of those magnificent heavy instruments might want a second one. So might be a bigger field, but anyway, that's the way it is. But
no, my head is
any
now
inventors.
my head is now whirling. There is actually some progress being made with carbon fiber drums, and that doesn't seem like too far of a step away. So.
Well, yeah, the tone has to be top notch, so I've had people offer me light instruments that I didn't really like, so I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like kick-ass instruments that also weigh less, so if anyone's got one of those, I'm here. And I guess the only other thing that I want to mention is that I haven't done a lot of, I've done a handful of American festivals, but I haven't really done a lot of them. And there are so many fabulous players that I haven't seen in so long. And if any of them are listening, I just want to give you a big hug, virtual hug, and a big hello. And I hope we cross paths again someday. And of course, my Europe friends, same with you. And, it is a hard time in terms of our connection to each other because, of course, we do an ensemble art. And that's a lot of what it is. It's a musical exchange. And so we'll see it through. And I hope we'll all see each other again sooner rather than later.
Well, thank you so much for this. And one of my fondest wishes is that someday we can be on stage at the same gig at the same time,
I hope so.
hopefully playing the same song. But
I hope so. Or if someone will please invent a way for Zoom to not have a delay, that would help us a lot too.
That's true.
So let's get rid of that. So if you can, anyone out there, please, let's invent something so that we can at least jam with each other from afar. So that would be good.
All right, Cynthia, you take care now.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Trad Jazz Today. Dan shows new interviews every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Make sure to check out the archive of past shows, and please give us a thumbs up when you subscribe to the channel. Bye.